Welcome back to another fantastic episode of I'm Gonna Talk and You're Gonna Listen, and we're gonna watch the sunset, I guess. So, where were we when we last left off? There's 7 days, 7 days to the election, something like that. I'm bad at counting numbers. And went to the grocery store, and it's always hard to say, like, you know, is the grocery store like really really further down, like down in the groceries, or do they actually have, is it just normal for a Sunday for like half the soup to be gone, half the flour and sugar to be gone, you know 2/3 of the Mexican food to be gone, and like because they've got their own like aisle at the grocery store. you know is it normal for there to just be like a million people at Walmart on a Sunday morning when usually they're all at church? So is all that normal? If you're baselining, is that normal? And I think what this has to remind you of is, like, you don't prepare for what's going to happen necessarily. You got to prepare for what everybody else is going to do. So if you were planning a big baking thing, or you're planning a big family dinner, you might think, I'm going to go out and buy that stuff. Well, if you weren't paying attention to the fact that, the shit's about to hit the fan and everybody's emptying the grocery store out, you know, planning your big dinner for everybody, if you're planning on going to the store to buy it all at once, is going to be a challenge, or only going to one store versus going to three stores. Oh, yep, apologizing for the crappy mic. I'm on a crappy Chinese microphone. Oh, leave a comment down below if the pausing between words is too short or too long. I like to have long pauses, and I think it gives the ideas room to breathe. But it turns out probably like a third of my podcast is just me pausing as I think. So I'm sure that's not a great listening experience. But I don't know, because I don't get really great feedback, and I don't have any support at all. So just kind of figuring this out and expecting that all of you would leave feedback or something. So yeah. So what's on all y'all's mind? I guess on the one hand, if I just have to like pause, it's not that big of a deal. Too bad I can't remotely control the pausing. That'd be cool. It's crazy. It's crazy how. It's crazy how, like, just the slightest. I like just barely brush against this microphone, which is obviously completely inaudible. But like, I watch the sound volume spike like a train, or like a jet, just like ripped across the sky. Uh, um, so being prepared, like, what does that look like? I think a lot of prepper channels, I think fundamentally they would agree if the algorithm actually allowed them all to agree without having to one up each other or offer just like very very subtle spins. I think by and large every channel would say almost the same thing, depending on the limits of their knowledge. And so a lot of the time I find myself thinking, like, what do I really have to add to all these people with just way more experience? And I think like some of my more unique experiences are like having to deal with riots and protests, just the massive amount of civil unrest, and the fact that while everybody else was sheltering during the, I went to as many stores as I could to try to figure out what really happens. How do people really act during the Rona? Because see, if all the preppers were all hunkered down, none of them really know what it was like going to like 6 or 7 grocery stores. They might read, secondhand accounts, or they might imagine or something, but like until you've gone to like, the store that you've gone to 100 times, and all of a sudden there's sheriffs and security outside, and then like, well, what, like a crazy, like, dystopian, like, it can get that way overnight. And I'm not even talking about Costco, although Costco got absolutely ridiculous during the Rona. And still, in my opinion, I think they way overstepped their boundaries. But Costco is notorious for overstepping its boundaries. But there was, so we were at the Walmart, and there was just like an older guy. He looked kind of like a Vietnam vet, if I'm being honest. And he had his chair parked like right smack in the middle of the way to be able to leave the Walmart. Um, am I under the impression that this guy could even remotely stop me, even like 1%? No. However, um, he, he was, it was interesting, like very, very different from the grandma brigade, very different from the whale brigade, that I'm starting to call them, because I feel like a lot of security companies are just hiring just absolute land whales, um, which is insane to me. I know it's really dangerous, but some of them pay a lot of money and some of them don't. So I really don't get a lot of that. It's very strange to me. But this guy was neither of those. He looked kind of like your standard. He looked maybe in his like, you know, late 60s, early 70s, but he looked confident, and he wasn't chatting with anybody. He didn't have like a big social bubble around him. And I feel like Walmart's posture has changed very dramatically between like security theater and at least hiring somebody who is actually paying attention. And it was clear that he was looking for like a certain type of people, or a certain posture, a certain demeanor, a certain something. He was looking for something, and he was positioned right smack in the middle. Like there was no way around this guy, and he waved us on through. So it was clear he was looking for somebody, or a certain type of somebody's. So I thought that was interesting. But besides him, there was actually very little staff stocking shelves, and I think where people get confused a lot in Shit It's the Fan is that they go, oh, that's happening over there, so my area is not affected. Well, if you don't do anything to protect your area, it becomes affected with the second, third, and fourth order effects. If you draw Venn diagrams around the area where something's happening, you'll quickly realize that you're maybe only a couple days out from something happening, even if there's no logical reason for it to happen there. And that's because, again, I stress, you're dealing with very irrational people. And so you have to do things that otherwise seem very extreme, even though they shouldn't be. So you helping to defend your Walmart might seem stupid, and you might have even laughed when I said that. But if that Walmart's the only grocery store in 20 miles, that may be what has to happen. And like, you see what I mean? And it may seem like really hypocritical of me because I say, oh well, we're all switching to FedCoin, and the Walmart's gonna be handing you, food through a window, and have to use your FedCoin. But that's that could happen at some places way sooner than others. Your Walmart might be fine. They could prioritize locking down the Walmarts in the cities, but then they might not lock down the Walmarts in the rural areas. Uh, you know, they may turn them into strongholds later on, but not right away. Same thing with all those stupid plexiglass, visors, and but before that, they took the shopping carts and chained them together and made shopping cart mazes and stuff. Like, the people that, this is going to sound just kind of dumb, but like, they hire good security consultants. They just don't always necessarily have a lot to work with at first. So if you didn't go to Walmart's during the Rona, you wouldn't know that they turned them into like veritable fortresses using shopping carts. There was no way to to get into one. You had to like really try. Um, Costco did the same thing. Whoever the consultant was, like, must have been the same consultant for like Walmart and Costco, and you could tell which places like were more put together Whereas like Safeway, Albertsons, Fred Meyer, Winco, those are grocery stores here on the West Coast. They were not as well put together, but they had more of a security posture, but they didn't have as much necessarily fortifications, but they made up for it with just raw security. The caveat to that would have been Winco, that enclosed in their checkout area until the checkout area was almost a completely different store, like a store within a store. And actually, that's what this Walmart and other Walmarts that I've seen have more permanently like made that a thing, where checkout has like become a store within a store. Something I think electronics places used to do, which I never liked, because it's harder to go see where the checkout area is that you're supposed to go. But anyway, I digress. The point is like things can change very fast in one area, and then the next area over, you're seemingly insulated, but within a day you could still get hammered. And food shortages and TP and stuff is, a prime candidate for that. Like, you've got to really understand that you're going to have to evolve as a person, and you're going to have to really evolve your beliefs as to like what is and isn't okay to be able to survive. And I know that's really hard, because society is going to tell you that you're wrong. It's when you go to defend somebody, society's going to tell you that you're wrong. Now, should you intervene in two people fighting? No. But if one person's absolutely getting destroyed, with a very disproportionate, or the person's already down, or the person's already unconscious, and they're basically being murdered, society is going to give you like different guidelines, other than what actually like practically makes sense. Like if somebody's getting boot danced on into the pavement, you don't need to yell stop and wait for 3 or 4 more stomps. I mean, the person's probably going to be dead. And it's horrible to think like that, but like that's what people don't get. Like likewise, if you're a lady and your man is like sufficiently defending you, you trying to hold him back from punching them because you abhor violence could easily get both of you killed, or worse. Like, you have to understand that the people that you're dealing with have already made the decisions to do violence, or to take all this stuff from your grocery store. They've already made up their mind. You're at a disadvantage for having to make up your mind. Same thing with like somebody on your property. That person's already made up their mind. You're the person who hasn't made up your mind. Their actions are always going to be faster than yours. Now, if it's just a kid running through your property, that's different than a bunch of goons on quads or something. And they might be, these are all hypotheticals in another universe, in Minecraft, in a movie or something. Like, there could be a bunch of goons on quads, and they might not be actively threatening you, but they're on your property. Now, you're not in imminent danger, okay? But if you fail to react and their mind's already made up, they've just successfully done whatever it was they wanted to do, and you don't necessarily know what they were trying to accomplish. I had that happen to a friend. Now, they weren't trying to probe his property. They just were always used to doing quads there. Then he bought the place, and they didn't want to stop. But the problem is, once you start addressing them, the escalation never ends. And you have to have those decisions made first, so you can be planned and prepared and ready to address it. Not if it happens, but when it happens. It's no different from the cows trying to shove through the fence. Their mind's already made up. They're going to shove through the fence. So you have to have plan A, B, and C in place. So so what I did when I went to go try to fix the fence, is I brought out there the tools that I thought I would need. Now, do I wish I'd went out there with heavier gauge wire and more skills and more training to put the fence back together? Sure. But I did okay. Now, if they shove through it with their full weight, they're going to flatten the whole thing. No amount of wire is going to stop that. So, but at least I went out there with what I thought I needed and what I knew was kind of enough to do like an okay job. But somebody who's done it for 20 or 30, 40 years is going to do a better job than me. But like, at least I planned and prepped and went out there with the things I needed. But that's really hard, right? There could be a bunch of dogs running through your yard. There could be coyotes running through your yard. There could be a bunch of raccoons. Like, even if you're in a very urban area, you could still have to deal with a pack of pissed off raccoons or a bunch of feral, goons. So being prepared means having the mindset, but it means having the tools. And you have to realize that you're being attacked on both fronts. They don't want you to have the mindset, and they don't want you to have the tools. They want you to be a victim, which means the inevitability of it all is they want everything to be taken away from you. Once they have your tax money, once you've been taxed, they don't care what happens to you. And they don't have to communicate with you what's going on around you either. So there could be a bunch of police all around your house. They don't have to tell you what's going on. They don't have to tell you if they caught the person or not, or if the person's going to be out on parole or released the same night. They don't have to tell you. You're all just victims. You just don't know it yet. So you have to decide, like, what happens if someone comes over that fence? And unfortunately, like, it's gonna seem extreme no matter what. Defending yourself is always gonna seem extreme. Defending your property, defending your town is always going to seem extreme. Even talking about it seems too extreme because that's the society that they have cultivated. Meanwhile, there's Looney Tunes to say just the dumbest shit online. And you're like, oh, that's weird. He said he's going to go do that, or they said they're going to go do that. Like, that's weird. I don't even feel comfortable talking about having to defend my property. When the Goon Squad feels empowered to come and knock on your door or come kick your door down and do the most horrible unspeakable things to you, and then you have to worry about, well, I can't theory craft this out with anybody because it'll just seem too extreme. It'll seem premeditated. But like, if you don't, you're at a disadvantage because the other person's already made up their mind. I think that's why, scenarios are so good. You act a scenario out over and over and over again. You could try to figure out more or less what you're okay with doing. What seems like a reasonable response. You can figure it out by, having little mock stories. Where, you could even write a little story or draw or comic or make a little video game or whatever, but you got to figure something out because it starts to seem like, even putting a little gate in the way, having a little gate or something all of a sudden starts feeling too extreme. It's crazy what like a slippery slope. But there's other countries where they'll like coat their windowsills in broken glass and have barred windows and all kinds of things and you might think, oh, it's because their culture is different. No, it has nothing to do with their culture being different. It just seems less extreme, but how many people did they have to sacrifice having the most horrible things happen to them before they decided those things weren't extreme anymore? Like, how many horrible things had to happen to people before they realized it takes distasteful things to protect yourself? But I mean, it's such a beautiful day outside in between the rain, and you just think, like, this is what we're trying to make it to the next day for, so we can see the sun come up, so we can see our plants grow and try to have some kind of legacy. But if someone just chops all your trees down, sure, that's not a direct attack on you, but you're losing those resources and you become weaker. I mean, I really feel like your property and your belongings, as long as it's not just cosmetic bullcrap, although you could argue that that's for your psychological safety and your psychological resilience to be surrounded with cosmetic things, but I don't know. That's a little bit harder to sell, but I don't know. Everybody's got to make up their own mind at the end of the day. And just wanting to be left alone never seems to be enough. But one way or the other, in a week. Is it 7 days? 7 or 8 days? Like, the shit is going to hit the fan. If Orange Man wins, the left is going to lose its damn mind. He lost, quote unquote, lost 4 years ago, and they still lost their minds. Like, if he wins, like 2016, which is what inspired my books, like, they are gonna lose their minds. They're gonna lose their damn minds. And if K-Bone wins, the whole rest of the world is gonna lose their mind. So I don't think honestly, if K-Bone wins, I'm not even gonna care, regardless of what all kinds of stupid voting stuff happens, and the fact that they took it away from the VP to certify things, and I'm still really frustrated about that. But I think the 2020 election should have went way different, and it's still so stupid you can't even talk about it without being called an election, denier or whatever. Everybody saw the votes flip. Everybody saw the TVs change at the same time. Everybody saw that some of those states shouldn't have certified without doing more research, and they certified anyway. And then the original ballots were all gone, and everyone saw the ballot inconsistencies, and they saw how easy the machines were to hack. Everybody saw the fact that the VP didn't have to certify it, and he did. Everybody saw that. And still, January 6th, a couple boomers walked around the Capitol for a little bit. That's all that happened. If it happens again, they're not going to do shit. Okay, they're all just going to go back to work and complain and fuss and go, see, none of it mattered, woo, woo, woo. None of it mattered, woo, woo, woo. That's what they always do, woo, woo. They always do, nothing matters, it didn't matter. That's what they tell themselves, and it's just like, whatever. Conservatives aren't going to do anything, but the rest of the world is going to collectively lose its mind, because we haven't had a president in 4 or 5 months? And I mean, you could argue that Jill has been the president for longer than that, and technically it's the cabal running the whole thing, which I'm sure there's portions of each of that have merit. But the cabal's been running this country for like 4 or 5 months now. So what happens when Cackles, who has zero leadership skills, I'm not convinced necessarily that anybody in the 3 letters respects her or even likes her to begin with. How is that supposed to look? Other people brought this up too, like, I'm not the only one. What happens when she's talking to Saudi Arabia and they just look at her like she's insane? If they don't need money from her, so what? It's going to be like Netanyahu and Ukraine guy. They're going to be the only 2 people that'll talk to her because they still need her money. Like, nobody else is going to talk to her because they don't need her money anymore. Maybe Japan will, there will be a couple countries that'll still try to deal with her, but the rest of the world's just going to ignore her because she's insane. There's just nobody there. It reminds me a lot of the same with Hill Dog, where there's almost no interviews of her just having a normal conversation. And that's the problem. If she was really smart, she would get on Joe Rogan and she would have a completely normal conversation with him. And if she rambles a little bit, and if she stumbles a little bit, that's not a big deal. That's not a big deal at all. But she needs to do her best and show that she's a genuine human being. Build some confidence. And she can't do that. I don't think her handlers will let her. For all of the other faults of all of them, even AOC, at least there's tons of footage of AOC at least kind of sort of speaking normally. I mean, the crazy just keeps coming out over and over again. But at least you get, whether you like her or hate her, at least you kind of know who she is as a person. Whereas with Hill Dog, you've got a pretty good idea. Eventually, she's been around enough. to where, you know, you kind of know what kind of a person she really is. But with K-Bone, she's just insane. Like, where is all the footage of her just having normal conversations? Because unfortunately, what has been released to the public sounds like the ramblings of like a narcissistic, power hungry, tyrannical psychopath. The way she brags about taking people away from their kids and stuff, and the way she taking away guns and things, it's just like, I hope that's not who she really is. I hope she was just showing off to some friends and she really doesn't, that's not really who she is. Because it's even like, it's rare, it's rare to get any of those politicians to show their true selves. They keep it guarded under so many layers that you don't get to know who they are. And again, I still think that's why Orange Man is going to do so well. I don't even particularly like him, but he's kind of hilarious, like a stand-up comedian, and he just roasts everybody. He already's thinking what everyone else is thinking, and he just says it and just roasts them all. And it's like watching a stand-up show more than anything. But he also gets to who he really is as a person, and you can decide if you like that or don't like that, or the fact that he's rubbed elbows with so many Hollywood elites. But like, I believe humanity, the majority of humanity, is going to lead towards somebody who they know who they are. And even Sleepy Joe, okay, let's take Sleepy Joe for a second. People knew who he really was. Because what, he was like a career senator like forever. And I think I've said this before, if the Joe from 40 years ago had been running against the Joe now, the Joe from 40 years ago would have just ran him over. Like, he was really snappy and quick and charismatic. Like, not Sleepy Joe, Awake Joe from 40 years ago was extremely charismatic. Even from 8 years ago, he was still very, very snappy. The Joe from 8 years ago would have ran right over him too. 12 years ago. He was very snappy, like, so everyone knows who he was. And I think a lot of them vote with who somebody used to be. But still, it's been 4 years and nobody knows who Cackles is. I mean, all the time of her being a judge? Is that what she was? There's still like very little content that has come out about that. It's really weird. And I think still, if I think my prior predictions were that they weren't going to actually let her be president. I thought for sure that they would let her be, you know, through January 2025, and that they were going to actually not let her run once they got her war chest. You know, I thought they needed her to get the war chest, and they were going to let somebody else run, because like, she's gone through more staff as VP than anybody I can remember. Like, I just don't think any of her internal staff like her. So like, I think generally speaking, people are going to gravitate to somebody that they know if they don't like them versus somebody that they don't know. There's going to be never Trumpers, obviously, but like, who isn't suffering to put food on the table right now? You go buy $200 worth of groceries and you're like, oh, cool, that's great. This is nothing, you know. Now, again, at Walmart though, like, they had some of their canned food stuff that actually was like moderately affordable. But like, I think Survival Living likes to go to Walmart and get like whole kernel, like, cans of corn. I think that's right. Ours was ours was totally out of that, and that's one of my favorite things too, because I just like put in mashed potatoes, and it doesn't take up freezer space, you know. So, and you could make other corn related things out of it if you needed to. Well, like, they had other stuff that was really good. They had, you know, baked beans were not amazing but affordable. They actually had corned beef hash that was not amazing but affordable. But like, the average household is going to get tired of that stuff, you know, unless it's in shit it's the fan and you're lucky to have food at all. But things like canned carrot, yeah, I'd have to go back and watch Survival Living. He did a good video about this recently, but it's like canned corn, canned carrots. There was a couple of other things, and of course you need some kind of like tomato sauce, tomato juice, tomato, something. You know, you can like make a lot of really good meals with that, and not chew up your whole freezer with frozen veggies. You know, save your freezer for the meat, the protein, if you can. But like, who? My point of all that is like, how many people are actually like thinking that everything's fine right now and really think that they. What? Here's what I'm getting at. Like, do you really think you could take 4 more years of this? Like during Obama, we couldn't. We crashed. We lost our house. That's what 8 years looks like. In 8 years of a crash, I honestly didn't trust anybody who survived through that, because I'm like, something you're not on the up and up if you're able to survive Obama's 8 years somehow. And that's what this is going to be like. 4 years of Joe and 4 years of Cackles is going to be like 8 years of Obama, but probably worse. Obama technically had 2 crashes during his presidency, one in his first half and one in his second half. And this isn't like, there hasn't been a recovery. You had a little bit of Rona remote hiring, which wasn't really a recovery at all. It was almost like a little bit of a correction that was immediately met with another mass layoff. Like, who thinks? And I'm sure America is all sitting at the dining room table going, they're hovering over the two little dots, the Kamala dot, the K-Bone dot, and the Orange Man dot. And they're like, it's probably not about politics at all. They're probably just like, can we survive 4 more years of this? Because I don't believe anybody thinks that anything that K-Bone says she's going to do, they couldn't have done 4 years ago. There's no policy. She has no policy of how to fix this. She just laughs nervously. And I still stand by too that, like, if they would air, she would be doing better, in my opinion, if the news would air her public addressing unedited. Because I listened to one of her unedited responses that ended up being heavily edited. Her unedited response actually made more sense than her edited response. It's weird. Like, I think she would be seriously doing better if they wouldn't try to over edit her stuff so much. Because at least then the news could like justify what she was saying somehow instead of editing it entirely, which gives her no room to maneuver. It was like when Joe used to ramble something and then they would fix it the next day. They didn't try to edit what he said, they just tried to fix it the next day, and that's what they could do with Carambola. Let her say stuff, and if they need to fix it, they fix it. If they don't need to fix it, then don't worry about it. Instead, they edit it, and I think that hurts her really bad. Because I'm sure if, pretend you're, your household in America with your kids and your dog and your truck and your shotgun and your lawnmower, and you're like, okay, let's try to settle this once and for all. How is K-Bone going to fix the economy? And you're just like, oh, she's going to tax the wealthy or something. And you're like, okay, well, they've tried that before. Like, that doesn't do anything. I don't know. I don't know how she's going to fix anything. And so my point is if they try to go back and be like, okay, well, where does she say what she's gonna fix stuff? Well, they go back to her 60 Minutes interview. Oh, that was heavily edited. They go back to the debate. Well, she spent it all trying to bait Orange Man into saying stupid things, which worked. But she didn't, what are you going to do about the economy? Well, I came from a middle-class family. Like, holy shit, nobody cares. Like, come on. I don't think that anyone is going to vote for her. And I guess what I'm worried about, if anything, is that more people are going to vote for the Green Party and vote for the fake-ass libertarians and just screw the vote up even more. However, the funny thing is that hurt Orange Man 4 years ago. He would have won if the stupid fake libertarians hadn't split the vote. The guy that's running, I can't remember his name, but he's just a joke. I think that actually hurts her more this time, not him. Because I think instead of a bunch of never Trumpers running around, I think you're going to run around with a bunch of never Kamalas. Because the Democrats have been screwed so many times by their own party. Hillary was ahead of Obama. They chose Obama. Bernie was ahead of Hillary twice, and they kept choosing Hillary. And Sleepy Joe said he was going to run again, and they sent him out to the beach to go to sleep. They have gotten screwed in like the last 5 or 6 elections. I don't even remember. The DNC has had like an iron grip for such a long time. They're so corrupt. And I can't imagine, unless you're like a never Trumper, I can't imagine the DNC looking at that party and just going, that's not my party anymore. Not that they have to vote for Orange Man, because they don't have to. But I think it's going to split their vote. And I think that's part of what's going to split the vote. And I think the other thing that's going to split the vote is there was like 4 different socialist groups running for president. And I think that's going to split her vote too. So not only are there technically more conservative people running than her for independent groups, but there's even more left-wing groups than her. And part of that is because she doesn't appeal, K-Bone doesn't appeal to anybody on the left at all, except for, I guess, people that vote purely based on diversity and nothing else. She is not a traditional left-leaning at all, and she's like socialist light, but like, again, if you had put up like Pelosi or Feinstein, either one of them would have creamed her from the traditional Democrat side. But if you'd put up like, a Ruth Bader Ginsburg or something, she would have been like even more far left than Kamala. So Kamala fits in this weird center area that I think when it comes deep down to it, like, nobody likes her. She doesn't fit. This is exactly the problem with diversity in general. Is like, if you take diversity out of the equation and just made her vanilla ice cream, like, okay, well, what does she stand for? Like, what's her brand? She's vanilla ice cream, but like, is it like a really good brand of vanilla ice cream? Or is it like a generic brand of vanilla ice cream? Or is it like a really sketchy brand of vanilla ice cream? I mean, like, what is it? What are we doing? I don't think there's an appetite for that. Like, it's weird. Like, she doesn't have a kid of her own, right? She has like a step kid. Her husband gets like pushed to the side. Tim Walz is a giant can of worms. Like, they don't have a brand. They lack the branding. They're like vanilla ice cream that somebody slapped DEI on top of. There's nothing there. Like, she can't own the Borders Are thing. Like, she hasn't done anything. She's had 4 years. Like, the VP has a super important job, and she hasn't done anything. Which, again, I believe that they purposefully sabotaged her. Don't get me wrong. I think they never gave her anything that would really be in her wheelhouse. But that could just very well be because she has no wheelhouse. She doesn't gravitate towards anything. She's super nervous around crowds. She's probably scared to death of whoever her handlers are. She's scared to death of saying the wrong things. Because you can see her second and third and fourth guessing herself when she talks. And it's because she's trying to navigate in real time what she can and can't say. Whereas Sleepy Joe would just let it fly. And then they would fix it later. She doesn't have that luxury. She's really scared. I think she's scared of her handlers. And I think she's scared of failing. I think she cares about what some people think, and she knows really good who she can shit on, but she can't navigate at all who she can't shit on, because she doesn't have inherent power. She's not like the Bidens or the Clintons, and now the Obamas and the Bushes, or that just have this like inherent power. She doesn't have any inherent power. She didn't come from a wealthy family. She came from a middle income family. She didn't come from power and wealth and strength. She's she just lacks confidence. She majorly lacks confidence and power. She doesn't come from a position of strength. And when you lack confidence, people pick up on it. It's not it's not good. And I think people are going to pick up on it. And I think what they're going to do, instead of plugging their nose and voting for Kamala, who is not the person that they chose in the primary at all, which I swear it should be illegal. But the DNC just makes up their own rules. I think their side is going to implode. And I think when Orange Man wins, I don't think they're going to be mad at Orange Man. I think they're going to be mad at their own side. So, with that, I think I'm going to take a little break and try to figure out if I want to do a part 2 or not. We'll see. Bye-bye.